So we've just had some news, information, confirmation. Okay, that doesn't make sense. It kind of sounded cool in my head. We've just had some information about Call of Duty's next title, not counting Modern Warfare 2, that is due to come out in 2024 and is being made by Treyarch. This might sound a little bit weird because obviously 2024 is still quite a long way to go yet, and it would sound weird if it was a part of a normal Call of Duty cycle, but it isn't, and it seems like that's been scrapped now. If this information is true, it could mean that going forward, we won't be getting Call of Duties every year from now on, like we have done since the beginning of time, since this series started really, and instead we're going to be getting Call of Duty games every 2 years, which depending on how you look at it is a good thing, especially over the past few years. You would have thought that anyway. Looking at Vanguard and Black Ops Cold War, I think the games before that also had a 3-year development cycle. Black Ops 4, Infinite Warfare, I'm trying to think of what other ones. I'm pretty sure it's every game after Black Ops 3, including that one, that had a 3-year development cycle, and looking at a lot of those, or most of them, they turned out okay. So it's really been the past couple of games that seem to have messed everything up for whatever reason. The most recent one, Vanguard, yes, the zombies mode really suffered because of a lack of time, but the campaign and multiplayer, I wouldn't have said so. I think they were just bad, but I don't think it's because of lack of time. It was Treyarch that made the zombies mode for that game, but Sledgehammer, I wouldn't give them that excuse. It's the same for Black Ops Cold War. That game wasn't even Treyarch's originally, it was Sledgehammer's. Treyarch, from what we heard from leaks, had to come in and finish it off. It was really those two games that seem to have messed this thing up, whereas previously, 3 years seemed like a fine amount of time for developers to make a first-person FPS arcade shooter game that is Call of Duty. And there are many reasons as to why the past couple of games have suffered, which could also be part of the reason why going forward it seems like every COD will now have a longer development cycle and also a year of extra support once it releases. Anyway, Charlie Intel over on Twitter tweeted something. This actually comes from the Ghost of Hope, who is a very credible leaker. They said, new rumours claim that Treyarch's Call of Duty 2024 game will get 2 years of post-launch support. The Ghost of Hope replied to this by saying, I don't know a COD studio more deserving of 2 years than Treyarch, honestly. But if we go to his original tweet, on the 10th he said, update on COD 2024. Treyarch have had their budgets approved for a 2-year life cycle on the next installment as a part of Activision/Blizzard's 3-year budget cycle. Activision are hedging their bets on Modern Warfare 2 doing well financially, as well as the infrastructure of COD 2.0. Now, if you're asking what COD 2.0 is, if I'm not wrong in saying this is basically the engine, the infrastructure that all Call of Duty games going forward past Modern Warfare 2 are going to be built off, which on one hand I think is a good thing, but also isn't if I'm understanding it correctly, just in my opinion, because what this means is every COD game going forward, whatever studio is making it, will feel more the same or more similar than what CODs have felt previously. It was always pretty easy to notice what game is a Treyarch game, what game is developed by Infinity Ward, and which one was made by Sledgehammer because, well, it was shit. But you could always tell the difference between a Treyarch and Infinity Ward game because Treyarch's games were always more cartoony, arcadey, I guess, fast-paced, whereas Infinity Ward's games were more slower-paced, more realistic. It's difficult to explain as someone who isn't a game developer, but there was a noticeable difference between all three developers' takes on Call of Duty. But now that we have COD 2.0 and all Call of Duties going forward will be built off the same infrastructure, that could mean that every COD going forward, no matter what studio has made it, might feel more or less the same, especially compared to what they have before. There might not be that noticeable difference between the Black Ops series and the Modern Warfare series, which I think is kind of a shame because I like that. I like going from Treyarch's more arcadey cartoon games to Infinity Ward's more realistic take on COD. With COD 2.0 and every game being built off, I'm pretty sure it's the IW 9.0 engine. That's what Treyarch, Infinity Ward and Sledgehammer will use to make their games going into the future. And again, this isn't a new thing. Every COD previously has always used pretty much the same engine. It's just been slightly modified and updated for each developer in each new game that comes out. But COD 2.0 could mean that there is less of a difference between developers' games in the future, which, like I said, might be a shame, but also it's not necessarily a bad thing, especially for the developers. If they're all using COD 2.0, it could mean that it will be easier for them to make games if they're all using the same thing, which means less time spent on stuff like that and more time spent on adding actual features into the game, stuff that will improve gameplay and experiences for us, and also it's going to look good as well. But getting back to the original tweet, the Ghost of Hope is telling us that Treyarch have had their budgets approved for a 2-year life cycle on COD 2024. He does also say that Activision won't make a final decision for another 12 to 18 months, and what Microsoft chooses to do is in the air, still assuming that the deal goes through. Ultimately, Treyarch is working off the assumptions of 2 years. Things can change, so keep that in mind with this. But if things don't change and this is true, then this is only good news. Modern Warfare 2 is getting a 2-year life cycle, which is partly the reason why we're not getting a mainline Call of Duty in 2023, but it means a lot more content for Modern Warfare 2, so if this game is good, then that's only good news. If it is bad, then perhaps it's not great news. But for Treyarch fans, and Zombies fans especially, this is amazing news actually, because one, if the game isn't coming out until 2024, not only do Treyarch get a lot longer to work on it, considering the Zombies team at Treyarch only got 6 months to develop Vanguard Zombies, considering they didn't get the full 3 years to develop Cold War Zombies, they haven't actually had the proper time to make a Zombies mode since Black Ops 4, and that came out 4 years ago now. So if this means they get 3 to 4 years to work on Zombies for COD 2024, that's an awful amount of time to work on what is essentially still quite a small mode. That is great news. Maybe like BO4, we might see 4 maps on day 1 when it releases, let's say 2 at the least, but that's great news. And as for the game getting 2 years of DLC, well again, that's something that no one's going to complain about as long as it ends up being a good game. Yeah, that's great news. And I know there are some people asking, well, didn't we get a year or 2 of content for Cold War Zombies? That's kind of what the community called it. I wouldn't have really said that. It was just a few small updates, not maps and stuff like that, not proper DLC, although we don't really have DLC as such in COD anymore, it's seasons now. But if this does happen, because as the Ghost of Hope said, Treyarch's budgets have been approved for them to get a 2-year life cycle for COD 2024, but also the final decision won't be made for another 12 to 18 months yet, and within that time, a lot of things are going to happen. There's still the whole deal with Microsoft and them taking over Activision. When that happens, Microsoft could say, you know what, no, actually COD 2024 will just get a 1-year life cycle, but for now at least, that's the plan. However, there are some things that kind of contradict this, because it wasn't too long ago that we were getting news that Advanced Warfare 2 would be releasing in 2025, which contradicts this information that we've had from the Ghost of Hope. If COD 2024 has a 2-year life cycle, then that means that Advanced Warfare 2 shouldn't be releasing until 2026. Yet we have another very credible leaker, Ralph, saying that Advanced Warfare 2 comes out in 2025. So there's some contradictions here, which you would expect with us being such a long way away yet. And the Ghost of Hope did also get a couple of other questions asked. Hassam said, is it true that COD 2024 is still technically under contract with Sony? And he said yes, which you would expect. The deal with Microsoft and Activision hasn't gone through yet, and even when it has, if those contracts have already been signed, for there to be an exclusive deal between Sony and Activision for COD 2024, Treyarch's next game, just how we've seen with Modern Warfare 2, there is a deal between Sony and Activision there, or Cold War, there was a deal between Sony and Activision there. There has been for a long time now, really since I think it was BO3, Sony have had the exclusive content for COD. That contract is still there for when Treyarch's game comes out in 2024, which will be weird because it could be by that time Microsoft own COD. So anyway, there we go, some pretty exciting news. Hopefully this does happen. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Drop a like rating if you've enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, we'll see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.